The afternoon sun hung low over the quiet suburban street, casting long shadows across the empty backyard where colourful balloons bobbed lazily in the breeze. Balloons tied to a picnic table laden with untouched cake and wrapping paper that fluttered like forgotten flags. In the centre of it all sat little Tommy, his small frame hunched on a folding chair, staring at the ground. He was 7 today, or so the handmade sign propped against a cooler proclaimed in wobbly crayon letters, "Happy birthday, Tommy." But the yard was silent, save for the distant hum of a lawnmower from a neighbour's house. No laughter, no friends chasing each other around the inflatable bounce house that sagged under its own weight. Just Tommy, his eyes red-rimmed, clutching a single party hat that had slipped crookedly onto his head. His mother, Sarah, watched from the kitchen window, her hands gripping the sink's edge until her knuckles whitened. She'd invited the whole class, baked the cake herself. Chocolate with blue frosting, Tommy's favourite, but the RSVPs had trickled in with excuses. Busy weekend, family trip, can't make it. She knew why. The whispers had started months ago, after the accident that took Tommy's dad, the way kids pulled away, parents exchanging pitying glances at school drop-offs. Tommy didn't understand it all, not yet, but he felt the isolation like a weight on his chest. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek, whispering to the empty room, "It's okay, baby. We'll celebrate, just us." Miles away, on the cracked asphalt of a desert highway, the rumble of engines shattered the midday calm. Ethan Ghost. Harlan rode at the front of his crew, the Iron Oath Motorcycle Club, his leather vest scarred from years of sun and scrapes. At 42, Ethan carried the ghosts of his own losses, a brother lost to the sands of a forgotten war, a marriage shattered by the nightmares that followed. He'd sworn off promises after that, burying himself in the brotherhood of the road, the only family that didn't break. But today, as they thundered toward the city for a routine supply run, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled over at a dusty rest stop, the convoy of 20 bikes idling behind him like a pack of loyal wolves. The call was from an old contact, a nurse at the local hospital where Ethan's club had once donated gear after a fire. "Ethan, it's about a kid," she said, voice tight. "Tommy Harlan, no relation, but the name hit me. His dad's gone, and it's his birthday. No one's showing up. Thought of you boys. You helped that family last year, remember? The one with the sick boy?" Ethan's jaw tightened, the memory flooding back. The promise he'd made to a dying friend in the desert to look out for the lost ones, the ones the world forgot. He'd let that vow fade, buried under miles of blacktop. But now, staring at the horizon where the city skyline pierced the sky, something stirred. "Address?" he grunted, already signalling his second-in-command, Marcus, to gather the crew. Back at the house, Tommy poked at the cake with a plastic fork, the frosting smearing into a sad swirl. Sarah stepped out, forcing a smile. "Hey, champ. Want to open your presents inside? Just you and me?" Tommy nodded, but his lower lip trembled. The first tear fell just as the ground began to vibrate, a low, growing thunder that made the balloons dance wildly. From the end of the street they came. Not 20, but a swelling tide. Word had spread like wildfire through the club's network, texts pinging from one chapter to the next, across state lines. Ethan had barely ended the call when the invites went out. "Kid needs us, birthday, all in." By the time they hit the neighborhood, the convoy had ballooned to 120 strong, bikes gleaming under the sun, engines roaring in unison like a heartbeat. Harleys, choppers, classics restored to perfection, leather-clad riders with beards and tattoos, women in vests embroidered with club patches, all rolling slow now, respectful, as if approaching sacred ground. Tommy's eyes widened, fork forgotten, as the first bike pulled up to the curb. Ethan dismounted, his boots crunching on the gravel, helmet tucked under one arm. He was a towering figure, broad-shouldered with salt and pepper hair and eyes that held the weight of unspoken battles. Behind him, the others fanned out, killing engines one by one until the air hummed with the scent of hot metal and exhaust. "Heard it's your birthday, kid," Ethan said, voice gravelly but kind, kneeling to Tommy's level. He pulled a wrapped gift from his saddlebag, a model motorcycle kit, shiny and detailed. "Name's Ethan. These are my brothers and sisters. We brought some friends for the party." Sarah froze in the doorway, hand over her mouth as the yard filled. Riders hauled coolers of soda, bags of chips, even a guitar for impromptu songs. One burly man with a ponytail unpacked a stack of board games. A woman with a scar across her cheek set up a piñata strung from the oak tree. Laughter erupted as the first kid from the neighborhood peeked over the fence, drawn by the noise, then another, until the bounce house came alive with squeals. But it wasn't just the gifts, though they piled high. Action figures, bikes, helmets sized for little heads, books about adventures on the open road. It was the way Ethan sat with Tommy, sharing stories of far-off places, his voice steady as he promised, "Life throws curves, kid. But you got people who'll ride with you. That's what family does." Tommy's face lit up, the party hat straight now, as the bikers formed a circle, singing a off-key but heartfelt "Happy Birthday" that echoed down the street. As the sun dipped lower, painting the scene in golden hues, Ethan stepped aside, watching the boy beam amid the chaos of joy. He'd come for a simple act, but in that moment, the old promise reignited. A vow to protect the innocent, to stand against the loneliness that had claimed so much in his life. Little did he know, this ride was just beginning. Whispers from Tommy's past, shadows tied to his father's death, lurked in the edges of the celebration, and Ethan, bound by honor, would soon lead his creed into the storm. The cake was cut, slices passed hand to hand, the air thick with the sweet scent of frosting and the faint tang of motorcycle oil. Tommy blew out his candles, wishing not for toys, but for days like this to never end. Ethan caught Sarah's eye across the yard, nodding once. A silent pact. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. Yet as the party swelled, a lone figure watched from a parked car down the block, eyes narrowed behind tinted glasses. The celebration masked deeper currents, promises waiting to be tested. Ethan's phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have come. He's not yours to save." The rider's grip tightened on his handlebars, the engine's promise of speed calling him forward. The road ahead twisted with secrets, but for now, the boy's smile was worth every mile. The sun had surrendered to twilight, draping the suburban backyard in a soft lavender glow, the kind that blurred the edges of reality and made the ordinary feel like the opening scene of a forgotten epic. Laughter still echoed from the bounce house, where Tommy and a handful of neighborhood kids tumbled in a whirlwind of elbows and giggles, their earlier hesitations forgotten under the spell of the unexpected revelry. The air carried the mingled scents of melting chocolate from the cake and the lingering bite of exhaust from the bikes lined up like sentinels along the curb. Ethan Harlan stood at the periphery, his massive frame casting a long shadow over the picnic table, now cluttered with half-eaten plates and crumpled napkins. He nursed a bottle of root beer, the fizz sharp on his tongue, but his mind was elsewhere, snagged on that cryptic message, burning a hole in his phone. Sarah approached him quietly, her steps tentative on the dew-kissed grass, a paper plate balanced in her hands. She was in her early 30s, with lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and unspoken grief. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice barely above the hum of conversation. "Tommy hasn't smiled like that since before." She trailed off, glancing at her son, who was now perched on the handlebars of a biker's customized chopper, pretending to rev an invisible engine. Ethan nodded, his gravelly voice low. "No thanks needed. We ride for moments like this." but his eyes flicked to the street, scanning the shadows where that parked car had been. Gone now, vanished like smoke, but the threat lingered, a cold knot in his gut. He'd seen enough in his years with the Iron Oath. Clubs weren't just about the road. They were shields against the world's underbelly, and this felt like trouble stirring, the kind that started with whispers and ended in flames. Across the yard, Marcus, Ethan's second-in-command, clapped a meaty hand on a young rider's shoulder. Marcus was built like a barrel, with a shaved head and a tattoo of an iron chain coiling up his neck, a reminder of the bonds that had pulled him from the streets after his own family fractured. "Pass the word," he murmured to the group clustered around the cooler. "Eyes open. Something's off." The bikers nodded subtly, their postures shifting from celebratory to vigilant, their vests creaking as they scanned the fences and driveways. One woman, Lena, with braided hair and a healer's calm from her days as a nurse, kept close to the kids, her smile never faltering but her gaze sharp. Tommy bounded over then, his party hat long discarded, face smeared with frosting like war paint. "Mr. Ethan, can I ride with you? Like for real?" His eyes sparkled with that pure, unfiltered hope that hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. The boy reminded him too much of his own nephew, lost to a senseless drive-by years ago, a promise Ethan had failed to keep, one that still haunted his dreams. "Maybe tomorrow, kid," Ethan replied, ruffling Tommy's hair. "But tonight you tell me about your dad. What was he like?" It was a gentle probe, born of instinct. The nurse's call had mentioned the accident, but Ethan's gut screamed cover-up. Tommy's face lit up briefly, then dimmed. He was the best. Fixed cars, told stories about big adventures. Said he'd take me camping someday. The boy's voice cracked on the last word, and Sarah's hand found his shoulder squeezing. As the party wound down, stars pricking the deepening sky, the bikers began to pack up with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Gifts were stacked in the garage, remote-controlled cars that hummed to life with a flick of a switch, leather jackets too big for now, but promises of growth, storybooks illustrated with roaring engines and heroic riders. Ethan lingered, helping Sarah fold the tablecloth, the fabric cool and starched under his calloused fingers. "If you need anything," he said, "you call day or night. That's how we do it." She met his gaze, something vulnerable flickering there. "It wasn't just an accident, was it? The police. They said it was, but I know better. He was into something, helping people who couldn't help themselves. Witnesses vanished, reports got buried." Her words hung heavy, laced with the bitterness of betrayal by those sworn to protect. Ethan's jaw clenched, the old scars on his knuckles whitening as he gripped the chair. His own past mirrored hers too closely, a war buddy, Jake, who dragged him into a web of corruption after their discharge. Jake had uncovered dirt on a local syndicate, bribes flowing from crooked officials to shield their operations. "Promises get you killed," Jake had said before the end. His last words a plea to Ethan, watch the families left behind. Ethan had walked away then, but the Iron Oath had become his way of atoning, one ride at a time. Before he could respond, his phone vibrated again, not a message this time, but a call from an unknown number. He stepped away, entering under the cover of the oak tree's branches. "Harlan," he growled. A distorted voice slithered through the line, mechanical and cold. "Stay out of it, biker. The boy's father crossed lines that don't get uncrossed. You show up again, and it's not just him who pays." The line went dead, leaving Ethan staring at the screen, the glow illuminating the fury in his eyes. He pocketed it. Mind racing? This wasn't random. It was targeted, pulling at threads from Tommy's loss and his own buried vows. By midnight, the last bike rumbled away, taillights fading into the night like fireflies retreating. Tommy slept soundly inside, clutching the model motorcycle, dreams filled with open roads. Sarah locked the door, her resolve hardening. Ethan mounted his Harley at the street's end, the engine's throaty purr a comfort against the chill. Marcus pulled up beside him, headlights cutting the dark. "What's the play, boss?" "We dig," Ethan said, the wind whipping his hair as he revved the throttle. "Find out what really took the father. And if there's rot in the badge, we root it out, for the kid, for the promise." The convoy reformed in the distance, not the full 120, but a core group, 20 loyal souls ready to chase shadows. They rolled out under the moon, tires whispering over pavement slick with night dew, heading toward the undercity where secrets festered. Miles away, in a dimly lit office reeking of stale coffee and ink, a detective leaned back in his chair, files scattered like fallen leaves. His name was Harlan, too. Coincidence or curse, but Detective Ryan Harlan had traded honor for a paycheck long ago. He crumpled a photo of the birthday scene, forwarded by an anonymous tip, and dialed a number. They showed the oath. Time to tighten the noose. Ethan felt the pull of the road, the vibration traveling up his arms like a second heartbeat. Redemption wasn't clean. It was gritty, forged in the fire of choices that echoed through the lives they touched. Tommy's smile had reignited something in him, a spark against the darkness. But as the city lights loomed, he knew the real ride, the one testing loyalties and unearthing truths, was just beginning. The wind carried whispers of betrayal, but Ethan rode on, bound by the iron of his word. The city swallowed the convoy whole as they crossed the bridge, its steel girders groaning under the weight of Harleys thundering in formation. Streetlights blurred into streaks of amber, casting flickering shadows on the rain-slicked roads that snaked through neon-lit districts. Ethan led the pack, his chopper's headlights slicing the night like a blade, the wind tearing at his vest with fingers cold as regret. The air smelled of wet asphalt and distant rain, a metallic tang that clung to his skin. Marcus rode flank, his bike's growl a steady counterpoint to the unease churning in Ethan's chest. 20 riders now, the core of the Iron Oath, veterans who'd stared down worse than anonymous threats, their loyalty forged in the crucible of shared scars. They pulled into a nondescript warehouse on the industrial edge, the kind of place where the city's forgotten business lingered like smoke. Chain-link fences rattled in the breeze, and floodlights buzzed overhead, illuminating stacks of crates stamped with faded club insignia. This was neutral ground, a safe house pieced together from old favors and ironclad trusts. Ethan killed his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the drip of water from a leaky gutter. The others dismounted in a ripple of boots on concrete, vests whispering as they gathered around a scarred wooden table under the awning. "All right," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the quiet like gravel under tires. He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow harsh against the dimness, and replayed the distorted call for the group. The mechanical hiss filled the air, words slithering out. "Stay out of it, biker." Murmurs rippled. Lena crossed her arms, her nurse's instincts flaring. A wiry mechanic named Javier spat into the shadows, his knuckles scarred from wrenches and worse. Marcus leaned in, brow furrowed. Sounds like a filter, prose, but why the kid? What's the father got tangled in? Sarah's words echoed in Ethan's mind, her quiet confession under the oak tree. Buried reports, vanished witnesses. He nodded to Javier, who fired up a battered laptop on the table, its fan whirring like a distant engine. "Pull what we can on the accident. Name's David Ellis, Tommy's dad, garage owner, right? See if there's chatter on the wire." Fingers flew over keys, the screen's blue light painting their faces in ghostly hues. Old club contacts kicked in, back channels from ex-cops who'd washed out of the system, hackers who'd traded skills for protection. Fragments surfaced, a police report dated 6 months back, stamped routine collision on a foggy highway. David's truck had veered off, no skid marks, no witnesses, but buried in the metadata a note, possible impairment. Bullshit, Ethan thought, the kind of smear to close a file fast. Deeper digs unearthed shadows. David hadn't just fixed cars. He'd been a quiet fixer for the underbelly, helping single moms with free repairs, veterans with tune-ups, no questions asked. But 6 months prior, he'd crossed paths with a local outfit, the kind that laundered money through chop shops and leaned on small businesses for protection. Whispers of him refusing a shakedown, even tipping off a reporter about rigged inspections at the city yard. Then the crash, and now the threats. He was standing up, Ethan muttered, the pieces slotting like gears in a well-worn transmission, to the wrong people. Across town, in the bowels of the precinct house, Detective Ryan Harlan paced his office, the fluorescent hum overhead matching the buzz in his veins. The room was a tomb of filing cabinets and yellowed memos, the air thick with the staleness of too many late nights. Ryan was Ethan's distant cousin, blood thin as watered whiskey, but enough to stir old family grudges. He'd joined the force young, idealistic, but the badge's weight had bent him over time. Bribes started small, a blind eye to a speeding truck, a fudged report for a connected uncle. Now he was neck-deep in the syndicate's web, shielding their operations for envelopes fat with cash. David's meddling had threatened that fragile empire, forcing Ryan's hand in the cover-up. The accident. Clean work by a driver who vanished like mist. The photo of the birthday party crumpled in his fist. Ryan slammed it into the trash. Those damn bikers, Ethan's crew, stirring the pot. He'd gotten the tip from a mole in the club network. A rider turned informant for a quick payout. Ryan dialed his contact in the syndicate, a slick operator named Victor, voice smooth as oil. The oath sniffing. Harlan's leading. We need to push back hard, make it look like gang trouble, something to scare them off. Victor's laugh was low, predatory. Consider it done. But if your cousin gets too close, family first, right? Ryan hung up, staring at his reflection in the window, hollow eyes, a man who'd traded honor for survival. The irony burned. Same last name, worlds apart. Back at the warehouse, the group huddled closer as Javier uncovered a gem, a grainy security cam still from David's garage, time-stamped weeks before the crash. It showed a late-night argument. David facing off against two suits, one flashing what looked like a badge. Audio was nil, but the tension was palpable, fists clenched, shadows dancing under the fluorescent strips. "That's our cop," Lena said, pointing to the figure's build. Harlan saw his name in the report. Ethan's blood ran cold, his own name, twisted into this. The coincidence wasn't fate. It was a curse, pulling him back to the fractures he'd fled after the war. He stood, the chair scraping like a warning. "We don't go loud yet. Marcus, you and 5 others tail the garage site tomorrow. See if anything's been scrubbed. Lena, check with your hospital ties. Any records on David post-crash?" Nods rippled through the group, a silent oath renewed. They weren't vigilantes, not really, just men and women who'd chosen the road over surrender, binding themselves in promises that outlasted the grind. Ethan stepped outside, lighting a cigarette, the flame flaring brief and bright against the dark. Smoke curled upward, mingling with the night's chill, as he thought of Tommy's frosting smeared grin. This wasn't just about a father anymore. It was about shattering the silence that let monsters thrive. Dawn crept in slow, painting the warehouse roof in pale gold, the first birdsong piercing the quiet. Ethan mounted up, the engine's rumble a vow vibrating through his bones. The convoy split, some to watch, others to guard Sarah and the boy discreetly. As they rolled out, tires humming over potholed streets, Ethan felt the weight of it all, the ghosts of broken promises, the pull of redemption's edge. Ryan's corruption was a thread leading to bigger rot, and Ethan would unravel it mile by mile. But in the rear view, a black sedan tailed at a distance, headlights off, hungering for the chase. Sarah woke to the soft patter of rain on the window, Tommy still asleep beside her, the model bike clutched tight. She checked her phone. No new threats, but the biker's number burned in her contacts. Downstairs she brewed coffee, the aroma grounding her amid the uncertainty. A knock at the door startled her, Lena alone, with a thermos and a quiet smile. "Ethan sent me. We're not leaving you hanging." As they talked, voices low over steaming mugs, the first drops of real alliance formed. Outside, the rain intensified, washing the streets clean, or so it seemed. But beneath the surface, currents swirled, pulling toward confrontation. Ethan's ride had ignited a fire, and the shadows were closing in, testing the iron of their bond. The rain hammered the warehouse roof like a relentless drumbeat, turning the concrete yard into a shimmering black mirror that reflected the convoy's taillights as they peeled away into the grey dawn. Ethan rode point, his chopper slicing through the downpour, water sluicing off his helmet in rivulets that blurred the world to streaks of sodium light and shadowed alleys. The air was thick with the ozone bite of storm and the faint acrid whiff of wet leather clinging to his skin. Marcus flanked him, their bikes in tight formation with the five tailing the garage. Javier at the rear, his eyes peeled for that black sedan from the night before. The industrial sprawl gave way to narrower streets, potholes splashing up cold sprays that soaked through their boots. A gritty reminder that the road never promised comfort, only direction. They arrived at the garage under a sky the color of tarnished steel, the building a squat relic on the city's frayed edge, chain-link perimeter sagging like weary shoulders, windows boarded with plywood scarred by years of neglect. David's place, or what was left of it, a faded sign creaking in the wind, Ellis Auto Repair, letters peeling like old promises. Ethan dismounted, the engine's dying cough echoing off brick walls, and signaled the group to fan out. No overt threats yet, but the air hummed with tension, the kind that prickled the back of the neck before trouble broke. Javier crouched by the side door, picking the rusted lock with tools from his saddlebag, the click of metal on metal sharp against the rain's patter. Inside, the space unfolded like a tomb of forgotten labors. Oil stains blooming across the concrete floor like dark constellations, tools scattered on workbenches dusted with 6 months' worth of grime. The scent hit them first, stale grease mingled with the musty damp of abandonment, a ghost of the life David had built here. Ethan moved methodically, his flashlight beam cutting shadows, illuminating shelves of half-rebuilt engines and calendars frozen on the month of the crash. Marcus rifled through a filing cabinet, drawers groaning open to reveal invoices yellowed at the edges, notes scribbled in David's neat hand, refused payoff, talk to reporter. Ethan's gut twisted. This was no accident aftermath. It was a purge. Javier hacked into an ancient desktop in the corner office, the machine wheezing to life with a fan's labored whine. "Got something," he said, voice low as thunder rumbled overhead. The screen flickered, pulling up deleted files from a backup drive, emails to a journalist named Clara, detailing rigged safety checks at the city impound lot. David had evidence. Photos of tampered brakes on seized vehicles, logs of bribes funneled through dummy accounts. One attachment stood out, a blurry shot of 2 men in the lot at night, one unmistakably flashing a badge. Ryan. Ethan's blood ran colder than the rain seeping through cracks in the roof. Family ties, knotted in corruption, pulling him into the fray he thought he'd outrun. Back at Sarah's house, the kitchen light spilled warm against the storm's fury outside, steam rising from mugs of coffee like fragile hopes. Lena sat across from her, the thermos unpacked to reveal sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, a small gesture amid the growing storm. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she stirred sugar into her cup, the spoon clinking softly. David always said the garage was more than work. she murmured, eyes distant. He helped folks who couldn't pay, fixed rides for nurses on overtime, tuned up bikes for vets coming home. But then those inspectors started coming around, demanding cuts. He wouldn't bend. Lena nodded, her braided hair damp from the ride over, the healer's calm masking the vigilance in her gaze. She'd parked her bike out of sight, but her radio crackled faintly with updates from the crew. Tommy stirred upstairs, his footsteps padding down the stairs like tentative drumbeats. He appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the model motorcycle tucked under his arm. "Mom? Is the party still going?" His voice was small, laced with the innocence that made Sarah's heart ache. She pulled him into a hug, the fabric of his pajamas soft and warm. Lena smiled, offering him a sandwich. "Every day's a party if you've got good company, kiddo." But as Tommy munched, oblivious, Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Tell your biker friends to back off, or the boy joins his dad." Her face paled, and Lena's hand shot out, steadying her. "Ethan needs to know. Now." The call connected amid static, Ethan's voice gravelly over the line from the garage. "What?" Sarah relayed the threat, words tumbling out in a rush, the rain outside mirroring the flood of fear. Ethan's end went silent then. "We're coming back. Lock the doors. Marcus, get the full crew rolling. Notify the out-of-towners. This ends today." He pocketed the phone, the weight of it all settling like lead in his chest. Ryan's shadow loomed larger now, a betrayal that cut deeper than any war wound. The Iron Oath wasn't built for vendettas, but for justice when the system failed, the quiet kind, rooted in loyalty, not flash. Yet this pulled at the promise Ethan had made to Jake all those years ago: protect the overlooked, stand firm against the tide. As they mounted up, engines roaring defiance against the storm, the black sedan reappeared at the street's end, tires hissing on wet pavement, closing the distance. Javier spotted it first, shouting over the wind, "We've got company!" Ethan gunned the throttle, the convoy surging forward in a thunder of horsepower, weaving through the industrial maze. Rain lashed their faces, visibility dropping to a veil of grey, but they rode as one, flankers peeling off to block alleys, forcing the sedan to swerve. It was a chase born of shadows, no guns drawn yet, just the raw pulse of pursuit under leaden skies. Miles away, Ryan Harlan slammed his desk phone down, the precinct's hum fading to a distant roar in his ears. Victor's voice had been silk over venom. "Your bikers are at the garage. Clean it up, or we will." Ryan's hands shook as he grabbed his keys, the badge on his belt a mocking weight. He'd justified it all, family provided, debts paid, but David's stand had unraveled the edges, and now Ethan's interference threatened the core. Driving into the rain, wipers slashing frantically, he felt the noose tighten. Blood called to blood, but honor. That was the ghost haunting them both. The convoy broke free onto the highway, the sedan's headlights fading in the rear view as it veered off an exit. Cowardice or strategy, Ethan couldn't tell. But the message was clear, lines drawn, promises tested. Back at Sarah's, Lena barricaded the door, Tommy's questions met with stories of brave riders to keep fear at bay. Ethan arrived soaked, water pooling at his boots, pulling Sarah aside in the dim hallway. "Your husband's fight. It's ours now. We'll expose the rot, bring truth to light. But it means riding through fire." She nodded, eyes fierce. "For Tommy, for David." As the storm eased to a drizzle, the full crew assembled in the street, numbers swelling again to 50, word rippling through the network like a call to arms. Engines idled, a low symphony of resolve, the air electric with the scent of rain-washed earth and oiled chrome. Ethan addressed them from his bike, voice steady. "This ain't about glory, it's about the kid, the father, the word we give. We ride for redemption." Nods rippled, vests gleaming wetly under street lamps. The oath renewed, they prepared to strike at the heart of the corruption, one shadowed mile at a time. If this chapter's stirring something in you, the grit of loyalty, the fight for what's right, hit that like button. It helps these stories reach more roads, more hearts like yours. The drizzle had lifted, leaving the streets glistening like polished obsidian under the sodium glow of street lamps, the air heavy with the fresh, mineral scent of rain-soaked earth and the faint oily residue of idling engines. 50 bikes formed a ragged semicircle in front of Sarah's modest house, their chrome accents catching the light in fleeting sparks, a metallic constellation ready to ignite. Ethan stood astride his Harley at the center, the leather of his gloves creaking as he gripped the handlebars, his broad silhouette framed against the open garage door, where shadows pooled like unspoken fears. The crew waited in silence, raindrops beading on vests and helmets, the collective breath of the group a low undercurrent to the night's hush. Tommy peeked from the window upstairs, his small face pressed to the glass, wide-eyed at the gathering army of guardians, while Sarah stood beside Lena in the doorway, her arms crossed tight against the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Ethan's voice carried clear and steady, gravel honed by years on the wind. David Ellis stood for something. Helped the forgotten when no one else would. They silenced him for it, buried the truth under badges and lies. Now they've come for his boy, for us. But the iron oath doesn't bend. We ride to uncover, to protect, to honor the promises that bind us tighter than blood. A murmur of assent rippled through the ranks, fists thumping against chests in a rhythmic oath, the sound echoing like distant thunder. Marcus nodded from Ethan's left, his shaved head slick with moisture, eyes burning with the fire of old battles. Javier revved his engine once, a sharp bark that cut the quiet, signaling readiness. No one spoke of fear. It was the shadow they chased, not the one they fled. They split the force with precision born of road-honed instinct. 20 to shadow Sarah and Tommy through the night, circling the block in rotating patrols, headlights dim to ghosts in the dark. Lena led that detail, her bike purring soft as she pulled Sarah aside one last time. "We'll keep watch. You rest what you can." Sarah's nod was firm, her fingers brushing the doorframe as if anchoring herself to the home David had built. Inside, Tommy clutched his model bike, the plastic wheels spinning idly in his hands as Lena spun a tale of endless highways and unbreakable crews to ease him back to sleep. The house settled into watchful quiet, curtains twitching at every passing shadow. Ethan took the rest, 30 strong, toward the precinct's underbelly, the convoy rolling out in a low growl that vibrated through the neighborhood's sleeping bones. Tires hissed over damp asphalt, weaving past strip malls with flickering neon signs advertising promises of cheap eats and fleeting escapes. The city unfolded in layers, upscale avenues giving way to the gritty veins where power brokered in backrooms and justice twisted like overheated metal. Ethan's mind raced ahead, piecing the fragments, David's emails, the tampered photos, Ryan's badge flashing in the grainy feed. Cousin or not, blood didn't excuse the rot. It only made the cut deeper. The war had taught him that. Loyalties fractured under pressure, but the ones you forged anew, those held like iron. They parked a block from the precinct, engines cut to whispers, the group melting into the alley's embrace, where dumpsters loomed like silent allies, their lids slick with rain. Ethan led a small team, Marcus, Javier and 2 others, silent shadows in black hoodies over vests, toward the side entrance. A service door scarred by years of neglect. Javier worked the lock again, his picks dancing in the dim light of a single bulb, the click barely audible over the distant wail of sirens. Inside, the corridor stretched dim and echoing, fluorescent strips buzzing overhead like angry hornets, the air thick with the institutional tang of bleach and stale paperwork. Footsteps muffled on linoleum. They ghosted toward Ryan's office, hearts pounding a steady cadence against ribs. The door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out like an invitation to reckoning. Ethan peered through, the scene unfolding in frozen tableau. Ryan hunched over his desk, face illuminated by the laptop's glow, fingers drumming a nervous tattoo on the wood. Papers scattered. Reports on David marked closed. Alongside photos of the birthday party, Tommy's smile of accusation in pixel form. Victor's voice crackled from a speakerphone, smooth and insistent. The bikers hit the garage. If they connect the dots to you, we're all exposed. Handle Harlan, your blood, your mess. Ryan's reply was a hiss, laced with desperation. I will. Set the trap at the old mill. Make it look like a rival crew ambush. They'll bite. Ethan's blood surged, hot and unyielding. He pushed the door open with a deliberate creak, the sound slicing the tension like a blade. Ryan jolted upright, chair scraping back, his hand instinctively reaching for the drawer where his sidearm waited. But Marcus was faster, a wall of muscle blocking the path, Javier's glare pinning him in place. "Evening, cousin," Ethan said, voice low thunder, stepping into the light. His frame filled the doorway, rain still dripping from his beard, eyes locked on Ryan's with the weight of shared history and shattered trust. "David's files. The truth. Hand them over, and maybe we walk away clean." Ryan's face twisted, shock melting to defiance, then a flicker of something raw, like regret glimpsed in a rear view. "You don't get it. Ethan, the system's bigger than us. I did what I had to, for family, for survival." He gestured vaguely at the walls, the badge on his desk a tarnished emblem. But his eyes darted to the window, where the sedan's outline idled in the lot, engine humming a threat. Ethan followed the glance, the pieces locking, the trap set, the noose drawing tight. "Survival? You mean selling out the man who fixed your old man's truck for free, the one who stood when cowards folded?" Ethan's words landed like punches, each one echoing the ghost between them. Jake's dying plea, the war's unpaid debts. Ryan lunged for the phone, but Marcus pinned his arm, the struggle brief and muffled, grunts swallowed by the room's confines. Javier swept the desk, pocketing a USB drive thick with data. Unredacted reports, witness statements vanished from official logs, audio clips of shakedowns. "Enough!" Ethan growled, releasing Ryan with a shove that sent him stumbling. "This ends the lies. We expose it all. Syndicate badges, the crash for Tommy, for the promise Dad made us keep." Ryan slumped against the wall, breath ragged, the fight draining from him like rain into gutters. In that moment, Ethan saw the boy he'd grown up with, twisted by choices, but not irredeemable. "Last chance, Ryan. Ride with us or get left in the dust." Outside, the alley erupted, engines roaring to life as the sedan peeled in, headlights blazing, tires screeching on wet pavement. Victor's men, 3 shadows spilling out with bats and chains glinting under streetlights. The crew met them head-on, a clash of leather and fury, Marcus tackling one to the ground, fists flying in the downpour's renewed patter, Javier dodging a swing, countering with a precise elbow that cracked bone. Ethan mounted his bike amid the fray, the Harley thundering alive, pulling Ryan aboard despite his protests. "You're coming with us. Truth or trial? Your call." The convoy surged free, bikes weaving through the chaos, the sedan's pursuit faltering as it fishtailed into a pothole. Rain lashed anew, blurring taillights to red streaks, the wind whipping promises into the night. Back at Sarah's, the watch crew tightened their circle, radios crackling with updates. "Inbound! We've got him." Tommy stirred in his sleep, dreaming of roaring engines, while Sarah paced the kitchen, the coffee pots drip, a metronome to her resolve. Ethan led the ride back, Ryan's weight a reluctant anchor behind him, the USB burning in his pocket like a spark to dry tinder. Dawn hovered on the horizon, pale and unforgiving, as the Iron Oath closed ranks, the corruption's heartbeat exposed now, pulsing toward confrontation. Redemption's road twisted sharper, demanding sacrifice, but Ethan rode steady, the Brotherhood's iron unyielding against the storm. The first hints of dawn bled across the eastern sky, a bruised purple streaking into reluctant gold as the convoy crested the final hill toward Sarah's neighborhood. Engines throbbed low and purposeful, their rumble a counterpoint to the fading patter of rain on windshields and helmets, the air sharp with the clean bite of wet pavement and the underlying musk of exertion from the night's fray. Ethan rode lead, his chopper steady under the added weight of Ryan clinging to the rear fender, arms locked in a vice of reluctant surrender. The USB drive pressed against Ethan's chest in an inner pocket, its slim form a talisman of truths unearthed. Files that could shatter the syndicate's grip, expose the badges twisted in its coils, and finally lay David's ghost to rest. Behind them, the crew strung out in a disciplined line, Marcus and Javier anchoring the flanks, their bikes' headlights piercing the gloom like wary eyes. Sarah's house emerged from the mist-shrouded street, porch light a lone beacon amid the sleeping suburbs' hush. The watch detail, Lena and her 10 riders, emerged from the shadows of driveways and alley mouths, engines idling soft as they formed a protective perimeter. Tommy's bedroom window glowed faintly, a silhouette of the boy stirring within, drawn perhaps by the familiar growl that had turned his birthday into legend. Sarah stepped onto the porch as Ethan pulled up, her face pale but set, the steam from a fresh mug of coffee curling like resolve in the chill air. She took in Ryan's disheveled form, suit rumpled, face etched with the grime of confrontation, and her eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition cutting through the exhaustion. Him? The detective from the crash? Ethan dismounted, boots splashing in a shallow puddle, and hauled Ryan down with a firm grip on his collar. Yeah, family complication, but he's got answers now. Ryan stumbled, righting himself with a glare that held more defeat than defiance, his once crisp shirt clinging damply to his frame. The crew encircled them, vests creaking, a wall of leather and loyalty that smelled of rain and resolve. Lena approached, her braids tied back, handing Ethan a towel from the porch. Boys still asleep, threats stopped after your last update, but the air feels heavy, like waiting for the storm to break again. Inside, the kitchen enveloped them in warmth, the scent of brewed coffee mingling with the faint vanilla trace of last night's cake crumbs swept into corners. Sarah barred the door behind them, the click echoing like a vow sealed. Tommy padded down in his pajamas, rubbing eyes heavy with interrupted dreams, the model motorcycle dangling from one hand. "Mr. Ethan, more riders?" His voice was a sleepy thread, pulling at the adult's frayed edges. Ethan knelt, leveling his gaze, the salt and pepper stubble on his jaw catching the overhead light. "Yeah, kid. But this time, we're fixing things for good. Go back up with Lena. She's got stories that'll make the road seem endless." Tommy hesitated, glancing at Ryan with unfiltered curiosity, then nodded, trailing Lena upstairs where her voice soon wove tales of desert horizons and unbreakable pacts. Alone now, Ethan faced Ryan across the scarred oak table, the USB slotted into Javier's laptop, its screen casting blue shadows that danced like accusations. Sarah poured coffee, black for the men, steam rising in silent judgment, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. "Start talking," Ethan said, voice a low grind, leaning forward until the table creaked under his weight. Ryan's eyes darted to the window where the crew's silhouettes patrolled like sentinels, then back, the fight leaching from him like color from dawn's first blush. It wasn't supposed to go this far. David. He stumbled into the syndicate's chop operation. They were stripping cars at the impound, reselling parts under the table. City officials, me included, looked the other way for a cut. He found the logs, the bribes, confronted Victor directly, said he'd go public. Sarah's mug hit the table with a sharp clack, coffee sloshing over the rim. "And you covered it. My husband died because he wouldn't play your game." Her words cut, laced with the raw edge of months bottled in grief. Ryan winced, rubbing his temples, the fluorescent hum overhead amplifying the tension. The crash was arranged. Sedan ran him off the fogged highway, no traces. I filed it clean. Buried the witnesses with threats or payoffs. Thought it'd end there, but you bikers, showing up at the party, digging at the garage. Victor panicked. Sent the warnings to scare you off. He paused, gaze dropping to the laptop where files scrolled. Audio of hushed deals, timestamps matching David's last days, photos of the tampered truck frame hidden in a warehouse locker. Ethan's fist clenched on the table, knuckles whitening like bleached bone, the scars from old battles pulling taut. This was the rot he'd fled after the war, the way good men like Jake twisted under pressure, promises fracturing into excuses. Ryan was blood, distant but real, a mirror to the choices Ethan had rejected when he traded uniform for vest. You could have stopped it, walked away, like I did after Jake. He died covering for families like Sarah's, begging me to watch the ones left behind. I buried that vow under miles, but it never died. Now it's pulling you in too. Ryan met his eyes then, something cracking. A glimpse of the kid who'd raced dirt bikes with Ethan summers ago, before badges and debts warped the path. What now? Victor's got pull. He'll come hard, hit the clubhouses, frame us all as aggressors. Javier interjected, his wiry frame tense by the screen. We leak it. Anonymously to that reporter David trusted, Clara. She's got channels outside the city's grip, but we need leverage. Raid the chop warehouse tonight, grab hard proof before they torch it. Nods rippled. Marcus, stationed by the door, cracked his knuckles. The sound like gravel shifting. Sarah straightened, fire kindling in her gaze. Do it. For David. He believed in standing, even when it cost. The room hummed with decision, the air thickening as plans solidified. Scouts to map the warehouse, diversions to draw syndicate eyes, the full oath mobilizing across networks for backup. Outside, the dawn strengthened, painting the yard in amber strokes that glinted off dew-kissed grass and the chrome of idling bikes. Tommy's laughter floated down from upstairs, Lena's story weaving magic against the encroaching shadows. Ethan stepped onto the porch, lighting a cigarette, the flame brief and fierce, smoke curling toward the lightening sky. Ryan followed, unbidden, the weight of his choices hanging between them like exhaust in still air. One ride, cousin, Ethan said, exhaling slow. Redeem it or get left. Ryan nodded, a ghost of resolve flickering, the first thread of alliance in a tapestry torn by years. Miles away, in a smoke-hazed back room reeking of cheap cigars and desperation, Victor paced, phone pressed to his ear. The warehouse loomed in his mind's eye, crates of stolen parts, ledgers fat with illicit gains, a fortress now vulnerable. Double the guards. If those oath dogs show, bury them. His laugh was hollow, echoing off panelled walls, but doubt gnawed. Ryan's silence, the bikers' unyielding surge. The syndicate's empire, built on silenced voices like David's, teetered on the edge of exposure. Ethan crushed his cigarette under boot, the ember dying with a hiss. The crew mounted up, engines awakening in a symphony of throaty power, the vibration traveling through bone and blood. Sarah watched from the door, Tommy at her side, waving with unshadowed joy. This ride wasn't vengeance, it was restitution, the quiet justice of promises kept, loyalties forged in fire. As they thundered toward the warehouse, the sun crested fully, bathing the road in unforgiving light, shadows fleeing before the iron oath's advance. But Victor's trap waited, jaws wide, testing the mettle of men bound by more than blood. Redemption demanded one final stand, and Ethan led them into it, the wind whispering of costs yet to come. The sun climbed higher, its rays piercing the morning haze like accusatory fingers, turning the highway into a ribbon of molten silver that stretched toward the industrial sprawl on the city's outskirts. Ethan throttled down, the Harley's engine a steady growl under him. Ryan's reluctant form still anchored behind, the man's breaths ragged against the wind's howl. The convoy, 30 riders strong now, with reinforcements trickling in from side roads like tributaries to a river of resolve, snaked through traffic, horns blaring in futile protest as they claimed the lane. The air whipped sharp and clean, carrying the faint salt of drying rain and the metallic tang of exhaust, a sensory prelude to the confrontation brewing. Marcus rode shotgun, his bulk steady, while Javier scouted ahead on a lighter scout bike, relaying updates via radio. Warehouse perimeter tight, 6 guards visible, floodlights sweeping the yard like wary eyes. The chop operation loomed into view, a hulking complex of corrugated steel and chain link, flanked by derelict silos that clawed at the sky, their shadows long and jagged in the rising light. Crates of pilfered parts glinted through gaps in the fencing, engines and axles stacked like war trophies, the whole site reeking of rust and deceit from a distance. Ethan signaled a pull-off into a tree-line overlook, engines cutting to a murmur as the group dismounted, boots crunching on gravel still damp from the night's storm. Vests rustled like whispers of oath as they gathered, faces set in the golden wash, Lena's calm focus, Javier's wiry tension, Marcus's unyielding bulk. Ryan slid off last, his suit out of place amid the leather, eyes hollow but flickering with the spark Ethan had demanded, one ride toward light. "Plan's simple," Ethan said, voice low and edged with gravel, pulling a crumpled map from his saddlebag. The paper crackled under calloused fingers, marked with Javier's hasty notes, entry points, blind spots. Javier's team hits the side gate, draws eyes. Marcus, you and the heavies breach the main yard, secure the ledgers inside. I go for the proof locker, photos, tapes, whatever David's trail left. Ryan, you know the layout, guide or stay put. Ryan nodded, swallowing hard, the weight of his badge's betrayal pressing like an unseen chain. No guns. The oath's code was exposure, not escalation, truth as the weapon, loyalty the shield. They moved like shadows lengthening toward noon, splitting into flanks that melted into the underbrush, the scent of pine and oil grounding their steps. Alarms wailed as Javier's diversion kicked off, a revved engine shattering the quiet, flares tossed to mimic a rival incursion. Guards spilled out, shouts cutting the air, their forms blurred in the dust kicked up by skidding tires. Marcus's group surged through the chaos, a tide of muscle and purpose, tackling the perimeter with grapples and sheer force, neutralizing threats with holds that spoke of restraint, not rage. Inside the main building, the air thickened to a haze of motor oil and stale sweat. Fluorescent bulbs humming overhead as they rifled offices, ledgers tumbled from shelves, pages whispering secrets, dates of bribes, manifests of stripped vehicles, Victor's signature scrawled like a serpent's coil. Ethan pushed deeper, flashlight beam dancing over lockers until one yielded jammed, but giving way to a cascade of evidence. David's photos, crisp and damning. Alongside audio drives capturing Ryan's voice in hushed deals, the crash's orchestration laid bare in cold detail. But Victor's trap snapped shut then, a side door bursting open to reveal the man himself. Slick in a tailored coat, flanked by 4 enforcers, their stances coiled like springs. The room's shadows deepened under his glare, the air electric with the click of safeties on concealed pieces. "Harlan," Victor sneered, voice smooth as oiled gears, eyes flicking to Ryan with predatory amusement. "Bringing family to the party? Thought you'd learned from your cousin's meddling." Ryan stepped forward, voice steady for the first time, the tremor gone. "It's over, Victor. The files are out. Clara's got copies by now. No more burying the truth." Ethan's hand steadied on a crate, the wood rough under his palm, as the standoff hummed, promises colliding, redemption hanging in the balance. The clash erupted, brief and fierce. Enforcers lunged, but the oath met them with the precision of brothers in arms. Marcus disarming one with a sweeping arm, Lena's quick hands binding another's wrists with zip ties from her kit. Ethan faced Victor direct, a grapple that ended with the man pinned against a workbench, breath heaving, the fight draining like air from a punctured tire. David stood for the overlooked, Ethan growled, close enough to see the fear crack Victor's facade. You silenced him. We won't. No blows landed fatal. It was containment, the moral weight crushing harder than fists. Sirens wailed distant. Anonymous tips to clean badges, the system's own hounds turning on the rot. By midday, the warehouse stood exposed, evidence bagged and handed to arriving federals. Clara's channels had lit the fuse, pulling in outsiders untouched by local strings. Victor and his crew cuffed, Ryan stepping forward with a confession taped on the spot, his voice breaking as he named names. The syndicate's web unraveling thread by thread. Ethan watched from the tree line as the crew rode out, the sun high and merciless, casting no shadows for deceit to hide. Ryan mounted behind him again, this time unforced, the road ahead a path to atonement, testimony, perhaps a badge stripped but honor reclaimed. Back at Sarah's, the house basked in afternoon light filtering through lace curtains, the yard still bearing faint echoes of balloons and laughter. Tommy bounded out as engines approached, his face alight, the model bike raised like a trophy. Sarah waited on the porch, arms open, her eyes meeting Ethan's with quiet gratitude as he dismounted. The USB passed into her hands, a legacy of truth for David's memory. It's done, Ethan said simply, kneeling to Tommy's level. The boy's hug, fierce and unreserved. Your dad's promise lives on. In you. In us. The crew encircled, a chosen family under the open sky, laughter rising as Tommy revved an imaginary throttle, the air alive with the scent of fresh-cut grass and possibility. Ryan lingered at the edge, nodding to Sarah, a silent amends for the shadows he'd cast. Ethan clapped his shoulder once, the bond mending in that touch, promises reforged, stronger than before. As the sun dipped toward evening, painting the street in warm hues, the oath prepared to scatter, some to distant chapters, others to guard the quiet victories. Tommy's world had widened, loneliness banished by the roar of loyalty, a birthday that birthed justice. Ethan mounted last, the engine's purr a farewell hymn, knowing the road called eternal, but the heart's oaths endured. Redemption wasn't an end, it was the fuel for miles yet to come. Thanks for riding along to the end. If this tale of unbreakable promises touched your soul, subscribe for more stories of grit, honor, and the families we choose. Drop a comment where this found you and what it stirred. Safe travels.